So back to part 4 on our Psalm 35. Feeling the stabbing pain of his friend's betrayal, David poured his heavy heart out to the Lord. The men who now sought his life were the same men with whom he had served as a captain in Saul's army. Like a witness in a courtroom, David proclaimed his innocence towards these men, testifying of the good he had done for them. The evil charges that they were making against him were completely unjustified and false. In verse 11, David's adversaries slandered and made all sorts of false accusations against him. So he pleaded his case before the Lord as passionately as he had declared his innocence before his accusers. He knew absolutely nothing about the crimes with which he was charged. In verse 12, as David would explain, he had done nothing but good for these men. He had come to their aid in their time of need. But now they responded to his kindness with just the vilest of evils. They sought to slay him for crimes he had not committed. And this vicious betrayal wounded David's soul. Forlorn is the word used in the Old Testament for the most excruciating grief imaginable, the bereaving of the loss of one's children. Now, in verse 13, at some point, David had tended to his false friends' needs when they were afflicted. Ill may refer to either illness or injury. The fact that they had fought together in Saul's army suggests that David was referring to an occasion when these traitors were wounded in battle. And David testifies that he had prayed earnestly for his stricken comrades, fasting on their behalf, and even wearing sackcloth, all right, a symbol of humility, urgency, and grief. By his words, my prayers returned to me. David said that his prayers were not answered and his friends were not quickly healed. David generally cared for these men. In verse 14, when his prayers went unanswered and his friends continued to suffer, David mourned for them as if they were members of his family. He was bowed down with concern for their recovery, in grief, as he would have been if his own mother's life was hanging in the balance. And then in verse 15, when David stumbled into adversity, these ungrateful friends failed to return the tender care that David had shown to them. Instead, they turned against him, wickedly rejoicing in the trouble that he faced. The adversity into which David stumbled is Saul's change of heart toward him. These fellow warriors conspired together behind David's back, literally tearing him apart with their continuous slander. Now, in verse 15, furthermore, they amused themselves at David's expense. The mockers to whom David referred were jesters hired to entertain the guests at banquets, usually by poking fun at others. David may have been comparing his former friends to these comedians, describing how they made fun of him during their meals. Or he may have been referring to an actual event, perhaps hosted by Saul, in which David was the subject of the jester's humorous scorn. Gnashing their teeth usually refers to people grinding their teeth together in rage or extreme pain. In the context of this verse, however, David may be stating that his disloyal friends chewed him up along with their dinner. Brothers and sisters, we should always expect people to act like people, sinners under the influence of a fallen nature. And it is for this reason Scripture warns about putting confidence in others. Only the Lord is completely trustworthy. Like David, we can expect to be painfully wounded by disloyal friends. While we should not allow ourselves to become overly suspicious of others, At the same time, we should not be overly trusting of others. We must guard against exposing ourselves too much to those that we do not know well enough to trust. David's former friends betrayed him for the sake of their own well being and promotion, cowardly siding with Saul instead of defending David. Job's closest friends forsook him in his time of trouble, adding to his intense pain. Sometimes the first people to turn against us are those whom we have helped the most. Like Jesus, we should be slow to commit ourselves to others, understanding the capacity of people to disappoint us. At the same time, we should rejoice in the true friends the Lord gives us, always striving to be a genuine friend to others.